War is a strange time, and there is perhaps no stranger one in history than World War II. From rumors that the Nazis were involved in occult research, rumors that have been successfully mined in films like Indiana Jones and comic books like Hellboy, to ominous sightings, mysterious battles, and ghostly planes, World War II scarred the world and left behind countless mysteries, many of which have never been solved. Now we're going to investigate a few of the spookiest, eeriest, and most uncanny enigmas left behind by the Second World War. The Nazi Gold Train. In April of 1945, it was pretty clear to the Nazi forces that the war was almost over, and it wasn't going in their favor. According to some accounts, they loaded a train with Nazi treasure, including gold and other valuables looted from Jewish victims of the Holocaust, and sent it on a trip through the Ural Mountains, where it disappeared. Some believe that the train vanished into tunnels created in the mountains as part of Der Riese, a secret facility built by the Nazis during the war. In spite of the efforts of countless treasure hunters over the decades, however, the so-called Nazi ghost train has never been recovered. Two amateur historians had boundless faith that they would one day find the legendary treasure train they believed to have been hidden by Nazi troops in a mountain tunnel as the Germans fled the area between Wrocław and Wałbrzych in southwestern Poland at the end of World War II. 2 years after grabbing the attention of the international media with their spectacularly ambitious hunt, Andreas Richter ended the joint search with Piotr Koper. "It's over," Richter told the DPA press agency, saying that while he hadn't lost belief in the train's existence, "I am 95% sure it exists." He was frustrated by inaccuracies in the excavation procedure. "The initial excavation didn't go deep enough," he said, adding that a second attempt never materialized because his partner kept on postponing. Their first excavation attempts failed, but they vowed to continue, until Richter dropped out this week. Both Richter and Koper said the treasure hunt and media limelight hasn't earned them a penny, unlike the town of Wałbrzych, which cashed in on the many tourists lured by the ongoing gold fever. Foo Fighters. Even before the term UFO, or unidentified flying object, had been officially adopted by the United States Air Force in 1953, pilots were spotting strange things in the sky. During World War II, they called these mysterious objects Foo Fighters, a name that was borrowed from the Smokey Stover comic strips of artist Bill Holman. One night in November 1944, a Bristol Beaufighter crew, pilot Edward Schluter, radar observer Donald J. Myers, and intelligence officer Fred Ringwald, was flying along the Rhine north of Strasbourg. They described seeing 8 to 10 bright orange lights off the left wing, flying through the air at high speed. Neither the airborne radar nor ground control registered anything nearby. Schluter turned toward the lights and they disappeared, the report continued. Later they appeared farther away. The display continued for several minutes and then disappeared. Myers gave these objects a name, taking a nonsense word used by characters in the popular Smokey Stover firefighter cartoon, Foo Fighters. Reports kept coming in. The objects flew alongside aircraft at 200 miles per hour. They were red or orange or green. They appeared singly or with as many as 10 others in formation, and they often outmaneuvered the airplanes they were chasing. They never showed up on radar. Amateur psychologists, military aviation buffs, and conspiracy theorists offered explanations, but none that the airmen found credible. They didn't believe they were hallucinating because of battle fatigue. And because the lights caused no damage, the pilots doubted they came from remote-controlled German secret weapons. The disappearance of Flight 19. Take a look back at one of the most perplexing mysteries in aviation history. It began as nothing more than a routine training flight. At 2:10 p.m. on December 5, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from a naval air station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The planes, collectively known as Flight 19, were scheduled to tackle a 3-hour exercise known as Navigation Problem Number 1. The flight's leader was Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, an experienced pilot and veteran of several combat missions in World War II's Pacific Theater. At first, Flight 19's hop proceeded just as smoothly as the previous 18 that day. Taylor and his pilots buzzed over hens and chickens shoals around 2:30 p.m. and dropped their practice bombs without incident. But shortly after the patrol turned north for the second leg of its journey, something very strange happened. For reasons that are still unclear, Taylor became convinced that his Avenger's compass was malfunctioning and that his planes had been flying in the wrong direction. The troubles only mounted after a front blew in and brought rain, gusting winds, and heavy cloud cover. Flight 19 became hopelessly disoriented. "I don't know where we are," one of the pilots said over the radio. "We must have got lost after that last turn." While technically occurring shortly after the end of the war, the disappearance of Flight 19 is notable in part because of its role in helping to establish the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. While on a training flight over that infamous patch of ocean, 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lost contact with the tower. A Martin PBM Mariner flying boat was launched to search for the planes, which were assumed to have crashed, but the Mariner disappeared as well. No wreckage or bodies were ever recovered, either from Flight 19 or the Mariner, and Navy investigators were unable to determine a cause for the total disappearance of, in all, some 27 men and 6 planes. The Battle of Los Angeles. The attack on Pearl Harbor shocked America so much that it probably comes as no surprise that when an unidentified object was spotted in the sky over Los Angeles only a few months later, the response was swift. Witnesses described the object in question as round and glowing orange. It didn't take long for searchlights to begin sweeping the skies or for anti-aircraft guns to fire more than 1,400 shells at the mysterious object. If anything was hit, no wreckage was found. In 1949, the United States Coast Artillery Association claimed that a weather balloon had started the shooting, while in 1983 the U.S. Office of Air Force History chalked the whole event up to a case of war nerves. Hitler's Globe. The Columbus Globe for state and industry leaders, also known as Hitler's Globe or the Führer Globe, was a globe designed specifically for various Nazi leaders, including Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler. 2 editions of the globe were commissioned by Adolf Hitler in the 1930s, though the actual number of globes produced will never be verified, as the factory that manufactured the globe, the Columbus factory, was destroyed in 1943 along with its archives. The globe was described as very large and very costly, with a wood base supporting it. However, it does not appear in any known photographs of Hitler, primarily due to Hitler's careful control of all his photographs. In May 1945, one globe allegedly owned by Hitler, and possibly the Columbus Globe, albeit smaller, was found by an American soldier among the ruins of the Berghof, Hitler's home near the Bavarian Alps. The home had been nearly completely looted by the time the soldier arrived, save for one globe sitting on what he assumed was the dictator's desk. The soldier, John Barsamia, took the globe home and kept it for 60 years before selling it at an auction in San Francisco. Bob Pritikin, an entrepreneur from San Francisco, bought the globe at $100,000, 5 times the original estimated price of $20,000. Die Glocke. Did Nazi scientists, eager to devise a weapon that could throw back advancing Allied armies, create a time-traveling UFO to win World War II? Almost certainly not. Nevertheless, the legend of Die Glocke, the bell, persists in conspiracy and UFO circles. Even though the Nazis lost World War II, they emerged from the war with an almost mythical reputation for high-tech weapons. Nazi tanks were often technically superior to Allied tanks. The Luftwaffe flew fighter jets in combat before the Allies did, and the V for Vengeance series of terror weapons, including the V-1 cruise missile and V-2 ballistic missile, made for terrifying, though strategically questionable, weapons. According to legend, Die Glocke was reportedly one such German Wunderwaffe, wonder weapon. People even floated the possibility that the notorious Schutzstaffel Colonel Hans Kammler traded Die Glocke to the U.S. military in exchange for his freedom. Kammler disappeared in the closing days of World War II and was never seen again, while the Allies sent back home a trove of German superweapons during Project Paperclip, including jets and missiles. There's no record of any version of Die Glocke ever being captured. The Blood Flag. The Blutfahne or blood flag was one of the most sacred relics of Nazi Germany. Originally the banner of the Fifth Sturm of the Munich SA, it was soaked with the blood of the fallen when the Munich Putsch was crushed in November 1923. Restored to Adolf Hitler upon his release from prison in 1925, the Blutfahne quickly became the centerpiece of Nazi ceremonies. It was not only presented at all major Nazi events, its touch was also used to sanctify other Nazi flags and standards, and to seal the oath of newly conscripted Schutzstaffel men. The flag was considered so important to the Nazis that it was accorded its own attendant, and Schutzstaffel Sturmbannführer by the name of Jacob Grimminger, and was kept at the Nazi HQ in Munich when it was not in use. The current whereabouts of the Blutfahne, which was last seen in public in October 1944, are unknown. It is, of course, possible that it has survived, perhaps folded up in a suburban American attic, having been unwittingly looted by a GI in 1945 and since forgotten. But it is most likely that it was destroyed when the Nazi HQ was flattened in an Allied air raid in January 1945, or that it subsequently disappeared in the chaos of post-war Germany. British soldiers at Auschwitz. In 2009, during excavations at perhaps the most infamous of the Nazi concentration camps, a list was found containing the names of 17 British soldiers. What is unclear is what the list was a list of. Were these former prisoners of war, or defectors who joined the Schutzstaffel? What's more, some of the names had marks by them, which seemed to indicate something, though what they indicated remains unclear. Who turned in Anne Frank? On August 4, 1944, police in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam raided a warehouse and arrested 8 Jews who were hiding in an annex disguised behind a bookcase. Among those captured was Anne Frank, a 15-year-old schoolgirl who had spent over 2 years living in the cramped safe house with her parents and older sister. It's a mystery that has baffled historians and investigators since Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, was published in 1947, who betrayed the Jewish teenager and her family as they avoided Nazi capture during World War II. It is believed that an anonymous tip helped guide the Nazis to the secret annex, yet despite decades of investigations, the identity of the informant has never been proven. Anne Frank's father Otto, the only member of the family to survive their subsequent deportation to the concentration camps, was among the first to assert that a betrayal had led to their capture. The group's hideout was located inside a warehouse he had once owned, and they were aided by several of his employees as well as other Dutch sympathizers. In a 2018 book, The Backyard of the Secret Annex, Gerard Kramer, the son of a member of the Dutch resistance of the same name, argues that a Jewish woman, Ans van Dijk, was responsible for the Franks' capture. Kramer's father was an acquaintance of Van Dijk in Amsterdam, and Kramer writes that in early August 1944, his father overheard Van Dijk speaking about Prinsengracht, where the Franks were hiding, in Nazi offices. That same week, the Franks were arrested, while Van Dijk was away in The Hague. Among other theories the Anne Frank house investigated was a 2016 report that suggests no one was, in fact, responsible for leaking to the Nazis. Instead, the group's arrest could have been a tragic accident. That report, written by senior historian Gert-Jan Broek, argued that the German security service might have simply stumbled upon the 8 Jews while raiding the premises to search for fraudulent food ration cards. Nevertheless, researchers do not rule out the potential that Frank and the others were the victims of a betrayal. Big Stoop. For a war that was fought more than 70 years ago, the number of Allied soldiers who remain listed as MIA is staggering, clocking in at more than 70,000. Many of these men disappeared in the war's Pacific theater, where oceans, islands, and jungles made recovery and discovery difficult. Among these were the crew of a B-24 bomber called Big Stoop, shot down near Palau. For decades, the plane and its crew were considered lost, with no wreckage or bodies to be found. It wasn't until 2004 that the plane's fuselage was located by a team of divers, and not until 2010 that the families of the crew were able to bury at least some of their bones in Arlington National Cemetery, though mysteries still surround the exact fate of the bomber. These are just a few of the strange and unexplained events that took place during and surrounding the Second World War. Even when the mysteries of war find solutions, the fog that war leaves behind often obscures as much as it reveals, and there can be no doubt that the aftermath of World War II left many other secrets behind, some of which we may still not be aware of even today. Like if you enjoyed the video. If you have any theory for those mysteries, share with us in the comments section. Thanks for watching.